So.
She's cute. Fun. All of like 6 times this last week. She during the smoking. Mark, and Grant, together we are mom.
We graduated from Wisconsin
And
Illinois and North Carolina.
Talk. Very cute. Very cute.
I only know one scene. Raise hands.
Neighbor?
How's it going? Where's your hubby?
He's coming to play the gym.
Going to the gym.
Be a good boy. Oh, another rental.
Red coast? I didn't wear that. Am I on? What a bad sticker.
That's good.
I think the broadcast data was.
Different.
Yeah, really, you know, it's like. Right? Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
You did all the right things.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Kenny Stewart. I am a new person to the Planning Commission. I joined this month. And I wanted to welcome you all to a town hall. This is not an official Planning Commission meeting, but I will tell you what it is, and that is it's an opportunity to hear a brief presentation and then to speak your mind about anything on your mind related to the zoning code, the Planning Commission, et cetera. Our goal in these sessions is to hear from you, and there'll be a little bit of talking from our side first, but the majority of time is going to be spent with you participating. We have a few folks on Zoom. Can you hear me all right? The Zoomers? I'll say hopefully yes. I see you're all on mute, and just to remind everyone who is on Zoom, we are not muting anyone from here. So if you choose to mute, you can do it yourself. If you have dogs barking in the background or conversations in the background, you may want to do that. And then if you'd like to participate and say something, you're free to do so just by unmuting and joining the conversation. My goal is really to make sure that this is civil, make sure it's constructive, and to make sure that everybody who wants to say something has a chance to say something. And that includes the Zoom audiences as well as those folks here. With me today are some other members of the Planning Commission, Vanessa Warren and Bill Mulder, who is the chairperson, Michael Berman, and myself. And we're not going to do a lot of preaching or talking except for just a little bit of a review up front. Our job is to listen firsthand. And let me also introduce my lovely wife, Jan Stewart. She has volunteered to be the chief scribe. She's going to be writing some key phrases and notes down on the pads. Those will then be typed and sent into the rest of the Planning Commission as notes from this session. And as you probably know, and Bill will cover this, there are multiple sessions that have been underway, and we're about in the middle of them. So if you have other ideas, other thoughts after this meeting, you're free to come to those sessions as well. So with that, let me turn it over to Bill. He's going to kind of tee some things up, and then we'll hear from you. Go ahead, Bill.
Great. This is our 4th town hall listening session, and the first 3 have been very good, and I'm sure this one will be too. I've given a presentation that starts out each one, and I know we have many returning members who have seen that presentation multiple times. It's getting kind of stale, so I'm going to cut that short and just get on to the talking and the sharing. So what's new is last Thursday night, the Planning Commission met, and here are the main things that came from that. We decided that the gaps and risks that had been identified in the current zoning code should be addressed. We resolved that we're going to begin an update process for the zoning code. We decided we're going to use the framework of the repeal ordinance number 439 and take off from there. And then we're going to review every article of the repeal 439 ordinance, starting with section 1, the purpose, which is 1 page long, And a lot of stuff that's kind of boilerplate like, but we're gonna go through the whole thing word by word and let every member of the community that wants to follow along. And it's gonna be good. I didn't think we were gonna need to do that, but we do have 4 new members of the planning commission since the last time through. So I think it makes sense. And it's gonna take multiple planning meetings, and the exact order and the pace is still being defined. I'll get that out shortly. And Articles 2 and 3 are the money ones. It's about all the measurements and the approval process and all the things that we're all dying to get to, but we're gonna work through the compulsories first. And so that's what the main things decided. Here is the combined planning commission calendar through April 2025, and we are on where are we? We're not on this page, but we're gonna but we will be on Saturday.
You're above them.
So anyway, this is our 4th town hall, and we have one more on Tuesday next week, and then we're gonna go on the road with some open houses to the Historic Society and the Holy Childhood Church. We'll wrap up that by 2/14 of 25. So the main point is we have 2 planning commission meetings in February, March. There's 1 in April. We could add 1 in April. That's what the planning commission wants to do. So those are the main points that I had in order to save time. And we can talk about anything you want. Here are what I thought would be some thought-provoking kinds of questions. And you can take off on those or just go total ad lib,
Okay.
as you're prone to do.
Yeah, I just wanted to underscore an important word. There was a word it said framework. When the planning commission discussed things last week and decided to go with the framework of the repealed ordinance, nowhere does that mean that we're going to take the ordinance and its content and simply dust it around and then serve it up again. The framework means the layout, the wording structure, the flow of the sections, not the metrics, not the things that determine our rights and our freedoms as property owners. And we know that there's a lot of work that has to be done in doing that. But there was also a lot of input saying that the current zoning plan, which has been in effect for many years, is rather cumbersome of a document. And it's just antiquated language. You got to look up certain things in certain sections that apply to one topic, but kind of all over the place. So by going to the framework of the repealed document, then that cleans that up. Now we have to get to the business of what should it say and what should the rules be. So I just wanted to be clear with that. Last thing I wanted to say is I live here year round. I'm a voter in the city, all that kind of stuff. And so I care about what you say and about the folks on Zoom. And rather than go through these things, you can read them and decide if there's something that kind of triggers your mind, or you may have come here today with something on your mind already. So let me just open it up and see who would like to be first. Anyone?
Bill, are the captions and captions on Zoom for the people on Zoom? Can they hear us and read it? Were you able to?
Good question. I don't actually know how to turn those on or off. I will shop around on the menu a little bit all the time.
Okay,
But I'm
because
not doing anything different than I did for the last 3 meetings. So I suspect that they're on. People on Zoom could tell us.
Yeah, and anyone on Zoom also chime in if you can't hear something. We certainly want to make sure that you're full participants. So let us know that as well.
And,
Yeah, the captions are on if you just access them on your Zoom screen.
Okay. Good job, Bill.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Good job. Yeah. Any other comments? Yeah.
Ann Trochinsky, 465 State Street, actual year-round resident, actual registered voter. So, in our code, there is some language about building demolition. Couldn't find it, but I know it's in there. So I would like the demolition wording to be updated, and I would like it changed to deconstruction. It's a green building, it's a sustainability effort. Lots of areas around the country are doing it. There are all kinds of professionals who run businesses, consult around the country, how to safely take down building, organize it, and get it into a recycle reuse stream. So I would like Harbor Springs as best as we could to get on board with that for sustainability reasons, but also for these reasons. The buildings that are coming down in Harbor Springs are Harbor Springs history. They are the look, the feel, culture of Harbor Springs. It's those big old wonderful cottages. And I've seen those big old wonderful cottages full of furnishings, appliances, countertop appliances, completely outfitted, smashed down, and all of it, the whole kit and caboodle thrown into the landfill. So if we keep doing that, we're gonna have a tremendous amount of pollution, and I really think that northern Michigan so far, and Harbor Springs so far, is pretty sparkling clean. So if we can keep the land and water and the air as clean as we have now, and I think that would go a long way to help that. So I did look up a bunch of stuff, another handout for Bill, he just loves my little handouts, I'm sure. 80% of building materials, if they're deconstructed and put into a reused recycled system, can actually be reused. MSU, Michigan State University, has a new department called Pharmacology, and part of their effort and reason for being is to look at old properties, get them into the reuse recycle system, and keep the environment clean. Those are people that we can make a phone call to. Maybe there's somebody that could come and talk to us about what they do and how we might get on board. There's another big deal company that's been around for decades. It's called the Reuse People of America. They're headquartered in California, but they work all over the United States. And they have all kinds of programs. They teach builders, they teach towns. If someone, for example, wanted to get into the deconstruction industry in northern Michigan, this is who they would go to learn how to do the job. So what I've included in my lovely handout for Bill is people, something that Lisa actually found online. Boulder County, Colorado, whole county no longer allows demolition. It's all deconstruction. And have this really informational 2-page handout that talks about how they accomplish their goals. And some of the pages that I've included here, planning committees, talk about why it's a benefit to the owner, how it's a benefit to the town. So for example, it might cost property owner $30,000 to $40,000 to go down their building and have it thrown away. But if they get on board with a program like this, which could be instituted by a contractor, a carpenter, an architect, or anyone else who just wants to be a deconstruction expert in the area, they actually save money because instead of spending money to have the building torn down and thrown away, there, if they get on board with a program like this, there are tax benefits, and they actually end up saving money rather than spending money. So I would like deconstruction language put into planning code, and here's something that folks can have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Pam, what was the name of the department at MSU?
Pharmacology.
DOMA, D-O-M-A, as a domicile?
Yes.
Dermatology, okay. Okay, thank
So
you.
I'm on board with what Pam just presented, but only as a last resort. Okay, we want to try and preserve the buildings and prevent them from being torn down. Okay, so if they have to be torn down, then go with the deconstruction. All right, we would like to see buildings that maybe, you know, the owner just absolutely doesn't want it on the property anymore. Our first option would be to move it, see if we can move it someplace. Then, you know, well, obviously the first option would be to incorporate it into the new building. Okay, but if that's not possible, then move it someplace else. I, for one, am desperate for an addition to my house. With the cost of new building materials these days, my estimates have been reaching $800,000 to $1 million. Okay, there's no way I'm gonna get $1 million extra out of my house, even in 20 years, if I went to sell it. Okay, I would love to have a building moved to the backside of my house, joined together, you know, with a breezeway or whatever, because I need first floor handicap accessible space for my husband and myself to age in place. So that's one of our bullet items there. Okay, this is our forever home here in Harbor Springs. I'm outside in the township. But if we can start getting things here in place, maybe I can rescue some of the houses that are being torn down here and have them moved out to my place so that I can join it to my house and then remodel it and adapt it to first floor handicap accessible. Our house only has one bathroom on the first floor. It is a 28-inch wide doorway with a bathtub on this side and a sink on that side. I can't retrofit that, okay, without, tearing the whole thing apart. And I only have one bedroom downstairs too, and you have to go down the step to get to the bathroom. So there's a lot of challenges there. So if I could just add a building, to the back, just tell somebody, I'll cover half their deconstruction or their demolition cost if you work with me and move the house out to my place, because then they're gonna save half their demolition cost right off the top, plus any of these taxes that Pam alluded to as well.
So it sounds like, just for clarification,
Yeah.
that your issue is, it would apply to any building. It's not really a historical context, it's just any building.
50s.
Okay. That's fine. I just want to make sure that was in your
Yeah,
mind.
so preserve if possible, reuse, if repurpose or refactor into an existing building.
Not only for environmental concerns, but to save on the process of building and additions in other places like your home.
Yeah, exactly. Because again, with the cost of new building materials, okay, if I could find the actual, full dimension 2x4s that are actually 2 inches by 4 inches. There's lots of things I can do with that, flooring, trim, stairwells, banisters, all of that stuff could potentially be reused into a new building and cut the costs of that
Okay,
new building.
got it. Thank you. Other comments?
I'll just, Caroline Kimball, 566 East Lake Street. I'm a full-time resident. Just to talk about what Lisa was talking about, Habitat for Humanity. I'm sure everyone is familiar, but they take a lot of building products for reuse. But the house thing is an interesting concept also, maybe for more affordable housing. Maybe there's a program, that could be implemented. I don't know if that's an option. You have to look at the cost of moving a house. Can be costly. Anyway, I think it's kind of an interesting idea.
Yeah, that's another bullet point in
Yeah.
favor of doing moving the house or deconstructing it, reconstructing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Karen
Karen.
Offield, Richard. It sort of goes along with the idea of notifying your neighbor that when construction projects are started, they come down to the city hall, and the address of the construction project is written down. The people then in town know that something is about to be done. And so the involvement of either protection, preservation, deconstruction, or let's just say demolition. They took all of the fencing at Birchwood, the old wood fencing, and they built a whole interior of a building with that old fencing. And so Birchwood replaced the fence, thinking that it was ready to be demolished, but it was reused very easily. Thank you.
All right. Yes.
I can speak to this because we had a home on a commercial property that needed to be moved or deconstructed or thrown away, and we were able to donate it to the tribe and move it completely successfully without a lot of problems. There are several companies in the area that actually move homes, and the process was very seamless. It worked extremely well. The home is now on a new site. Family lives in it. Everyone benefited. So I'm sure this works.
It can be done.
Yeah.
2 or 3 years ago, I remember seeing a house going down Lake Street. They were moving it out into a piece of property just west of me. So, yeah. Other comments about either this or any other subject? Yes.
Kathy Bregner on Lake Street. In the new code conversation, can there be a look at a piece of property that falls into multiple zones. And when building or renovation takes place on that property, how to streamline that with the property owner, the architect, and the city. I was involved in one where a small addition fell into two different zoning districts, and one had an 8-foot setback and the rest of the shed had 0. So there was a lot of work that we had to do, had to go in front of the ZBA. It's just a lot of steps that if we can look at these lots and figure out a way to streamline it, it was very time consuming for city staff, let alone the rest of us.
Yeah, agreed, and that's one of the underlying points as to why we want to go through the code. Michael's got a good story also. Ottawa Street has 4 different zoning codes on just the short street, so clearly things can be better streamlined, better organized, and I know that's on the minds of the planning commission. The key is to not overreach and not try to simplify to the point where it doesn't work for the community. So that's why everyone is trying to get as much input as they can, but simplifying is good. Yeah.
We weren't allowed to pick a zone, which would have been easier. We had to go through the whole appeal process. There has to be a way to, there were 3 zones on this piece of property.
Oh, boy.
And it just would be crisper for everyone.
So simplify things, especially avoid having multiple zones across the same piece of property.
So it's a city, it's downtown, it's not a big lot.
Yeah.
It's not like a massive farm.
Okay, good point. Other comments? Yeah.
On that note, on the zoning in general, Chris Heiner, East Lake Street. I've been thinking, I haven't been able to come to all these meetings, but I have been thinking about this a lot. I have in a past life, a background in urban planning and architecture, so it's always been a passion. And I'm thinking, how do our city zoning laws kind of fit into the broader region and housing and all that stuff? And I know since the crash of 2008, when a lot of home builders kind of, went out of business and stuff, we have had a housing shortage in this country. Everyone can agree on that. We're at least 2 million units short in this country from, I think, where we need to be. And I'm looking at sort of how, what can we do locally? My property, I'm restricted from building an ADU or a garage right now. That was not the case when we had the new zoning law months ago. And then you go back decades ago, I could have built an ADU in a garage, and it's gone back and forth. My lot is 300 feet deep. And I could build back there without impacting my neighbors. And for me, the more people I meet in this community, the more I see people are, they're driving here to work from places like Gaylord and Pellston and around the area. And I would just like to see, more flexibility on ADUs, an increase in housing types, different types of housing, not just single family, not just more mansions, but, more mixed use. I happen to have parents that are turning 80. They have an 8-acre lot in a different state. They're struggling to take care of it. So personally, I'd like to build an ADU so that they can live with us. And, over time, those smaller units actually, gives some of these workers that are coming from far away, the ability to live locally. That includes teachers, caregivers, and retirees like my parents. So I've been trying to read these full zoning codes. They are very long, and but I do have some summaries. I want to finish on some of the things that I appreciate about what the new zoning initiative did accomplish before it was repealed. And that in particular is single family residential, where we had R1 and R2. Those were consolidated with more flexibility into RN. That in particular, the mixed use residential also consolidated with clear intent And the business zoning, also multiple zones condensed. I think we need more of that. I really appreciate the work that the planning commission did on, over the last couple of years to create that new zoning initiative. And I agree that, regardless of what we decide on setbacks and ADUs and important things like that, the old, zoning code desperately needed to be
The current code.
the new current code, the old code, whatever, did need consolidation. So I would like to see us, continue on that path and get something worked out that is streamlined and simplified, but also meets the broader needs of the community and mixed use housing. So I appreciate the effort of the.
Thanks. And just out of curiosity, you mentioned the property size that you have. Are you in the residential district now or in the ag district, or whereabouts in town are you?
It's right in the middle of East Lake, 618.
Okay.
It's residential.
Got it.
Yeah, but
A deep lot.
it's a very deep lot. And again, as I look back at the history of the zoning code, it's just been interesting to see how amendments have made it so that I can do this and then I can't, and then I can do it and now I can't. And at the end of the day, I selfishly just want a place for my parents to be able to come and move into to our property. So that's kind of a dream of ours. So appreciate the work that everyone's doing on this.
Very good. Thanks. Yes, Karen?
I think what I'd like to ask Chris is, there was, I think, a little bit of pushback about, we love the idea of the historical nature of Harbor Springs with carriage houses and, maybe you weren't into horses and having carriages and things like that, but the idea of the ADU, it sounded so urban, accessory dwelling unit. Nobody knew what exactly ADU meant. But the carriage houses or having an apartment above the garage, things like that. But would you, you say that if you did an ADU in your backyard or a carriage house and it wouldn't affect any of your neighbors, would it, would you mind having to bring the neighbors in to take a look at what you're doing and and involving them?
Absolutely. And actually, I do want to say that I would be perfectly willing to, plant more trees if the neighbors wanted me to. I would agree to deed restrictions on, never making it into a short-term rental. I don't have a profit goal there. So I think those sort of considerations are definitely appropriate when you live right in the middle of town.
Because that's really cool. I mean, we're a town of 1.3. We involve our neighbors in lots of our decisions. That's a cool town to live in. Yeah.
Yes.
I have a question. Define mixed use, because I think of mixed use as commercial, residential together. And using it in a apartment dwelling, I guess I just don't understand how that would work.
Define mixed use as it applies to like an ADU?
Yeah,
Is that what you
to
mean?
an I,
Yeah.
as Chris was
You want to help with
mentioning, mixed use.
that?
That's not something we considered. Well, early on, we thought about whether there could be small businesses in residential neighborhoods, or calling it accessory commercial.
Yeah, that's right. But that was since taken off the table, if I remember right.
I mean,
At that point in time. So, well, let me ask the question. So what would you like mixed use to be defined as?
Well, just what I understand it to be would be, say, in a more urban setting where you would have a storefront, say in a neighborhood that would be on a corner, or maybe not unlike maybe Lake Street where we have kind of a mix. And someone living above but it wouldn't necessarily apply to an ADU,
Okay,
right? So, I just wondered, if we're allowing, I mean, I don't know, I just posed the question.
okay, well, let me put some words in your mouth and see if this is fair. A planned, organized method of having a mixed-use area such as Lake Street and a barber shop, as an example.
Right.
In your mind, that's okay, but to have, and I'll say this, but I want confirmation from you. To have a by right to put a business into an ADU on my property, that's probably not a good idea. Is that what you're saying?
I guess that, I mean, if you're gonna have an ADU, is that for one purpose? And I just don't think the two go together,
Okay,
mixed use and ADUs.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, I actually agree. I meant multifamily. Not
Oh,
mixed use.
okay.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Keep your.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
She's completely correct. I think in a typical planning glossary, in a definition of terms,
Mhm.
mixed use or multi-use means a combination of commercial and residential uses in a single building or a single neighborhood or whatever. I think you're absolutely right. That mixed or multi-use means that multifamily is a different thing.
Multifamily. would be better.
Multifamily, I see,
So,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and for the
Yeah, the
record.
result.
yeah, For the record, if the zoning code of the future allows you to build your ADU, your parents come and move with you, they probably won't be allowed to set up a fireworks factory along
No,
that
that's fine.
side.
I'm okay with it.
There could be some conditions. Yes, in the back.
I wonder if one of the problems we get hung up on ADUs, et cetera, is because we don't know how to image those. I mean, when people are talking, okay, let's put an accessory building in the back of the yard, what does that look like, right? So, and what does a duplex look like? What does a triplex look like? And I think maybe the ideas popping into our head might be outdated, old fashioned. And I wonder if the planning commission could maybe put up some pictures. I think once upon a time, Bill and maybe Victor did put up some pictures
Yes,
of
that's right.
buildings that serve in that way, and they were. I remember someone complained once about the zoning code. He was worried that if somebody put a tiny house, a building that's like 900 square feet, as a neighbor, he thought it would look like a shed. But there are some architects around the country, I don't know if they're local, but like Ross Chapin out on the East Coast, even has a book. Eric Mosher down in Beaufort, South Carolina, beautiful little buildings with a character to them, a style to them, that you don't really read them as a fourplex or a triplex. You don't get any kind of impression that 4,000 kids with 15,000 bikes and a whole bunch of cars go to those places. So I'm really wondering, this is beautiful, and if we could image these in a more modern, current way, look at a variety of architects, how they solve these problems, because I'm telling you, those two particular architects, you look at their buildings, you want one, because they're just lovely. They're lovely, they're beautiful, they're attractive, and a lot of those old-timey traditional styles, which both of those architects are kind of into, are what we are. We're kind of a traditional, old-timey neighborhood, kind of folksy friendly, at least when you get downtown. And these are nice examples. How many people live in these little? You know,
Mhm.
that one over there on the top right, Bill, that you just pulled out, that one looks like, how many families live in that building? How big is that? Two.
It's a
Is that for
duplex.
2 families or 4 families? That's an
Yeah.
attractive
Yeah.
building that could be outfitted, could be. You know, the materials, it's all about the materials too. How are these buildings getting clad? Right? That make it look like they fit into Harbor Springs. So, yeah, that's a big help. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, and another example is if you took the survey that was sent out, the online survey, there were some other pictured examples in that as well. And so, yeah, Nancy.
Nancy Rondell, I'm older, moved here year round. I have a couple concerns. I think all this is interesting and really good to talk. But I think we might be losing a little bit of the bigger picture of what the zoning code needs to do. And I know on planning commission, not very long ago, it was agreed that one of our one of the main objectives was to attract more year-round residents, a little bit more diversity, working, so some of our workers could live here, our teachers, our nurses, our caregivers. And I hear a lot when I've listened to all these meetings, I was out of town for a couple weeks, but I have listened to all of them. I hear a lot about what whoever's speaking wants. I want this, I don't like this doesn't work for me. The planning commission's job is not to respond to those individuals. It is to look at the overall planning for the community as a whole, now and in the future. That's what the planning commission needs to do. So I think it's very good that we're hearing these ideas. I think a lot of them are good ideas. I'm not sure all of them belong in a simple zoning code. I think we're kind of segueing into real specifics that don't belong there and certainly shouldn't be the focus of what needs to be done right now. Chris, I applaud you about, I've listened to you before in many times about looking at more housing for affordables and quotes in this area. I think we all know that. But our focus needs to be that. And Audrey talked about the schools and year-round people. And I think we can get really buried in all the little tiny details about things and lose focus of what we really need to be looking to.
Yeah, fair point. And I think I can say with relative certainty that whatever the end product is, somebody's going to be unhappy.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
just kind of the way it's going to be, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Kenny, because we're a community,
Mhm.
we're not one person, we're
That's
a
right.
community. And we really have to keep that in mind.
Yes, in the back.
Rick Tarczynski, 465 State Street. First of all, on mixed use, it is generally mixed use includes commercial and residential. But residential wise, it is a combination of single family, duplex and triplex, so different types of individual housing. The first thing to go during the setup of 439 was that people did not want ACUs, so I think it's being a dead horse to try to bring up giving people the ability to build a ADU and turn it into a commercial enterprise. Secondly, as far as the ADUs went, I think the biggest problem that we had with that particular part was that it was a by right use. And I think if we make ADUs something that has to come before the planning commission and get approved by neighbors, I think would have a better chance of getting that through. The biggest problem with ADUs generally was people were concerned with traffic and increased objects, bicycles and stuff, like thinking about people that come here for the summer with the big houses. They have 20 or 30 people coming into these houses. We have 20 or 30 bicycles and cars. And people are concerned about increasing traffic. But if you've got an ADU with single family or a duplex, you don't have 30 cars. I guess you've got 10 kids, which around here doesn't have, kids are one and a half to a family. So I think just taking away the by right use of the ADUs will make it more palatable for everybody. And allow this gentleman to have one in his property, because he's got to come and let his neighbor see what he's gonna do. And get the
I just want to add too, in the current zoning code, ADUs, except for one or two zoning districts, are pretty restrictive. The maximum amount of stay in an ADU is 21 days. Then, and I believe is it restricted to just family? Then they have to leave for a certain amount of time, then they can come back. That if a hope is to increase some housing options, and I too put affordable in quotes, but for
young professional or somebody that's looking to move here full-time, giving another option, that to do a long-term rental, obviously, the allowed uses for ADU need to be addressed. The other thing that, needs to be addressed too is the maximum percentage of your property that you can build on or have square footage occupying. So I think in the current zoning code, I believe it's different in different districts. I'm not quite sure. I don't have it totally memorized. That needs to be addressed as well, because that's an important part of the equation. I hear a lot, oh, we don't want to take up more green space, even on someone's private property. So having that percentage helps mitigate that. Thank you. Sorry, didn't mean to.
Yeah, so Chris, you and I both are in the same situation where we need to care for our elders.
I think you need to speak a little louder with
Sorry.
the snow machine out there.
Okay, so this is Morris, 7997 South Lake Shore Drive out in the township. But Chris and I have the same problem. We want to take care of our elders, okay, or other family members who might be disabled. And with the current code here in the city, you would have to ask your parents to move out after 21 days. Okay, how is that going to be enforced?
It never has.
Yeah,
I never.
Exactly.
Neighbors.
Yeah, the neighbors complain, if it's the noisy kids or whatever, but if it's just your elderly parents who barely make a peep, unless you have, crazy parent with dementia screaming and yelling because they're paranoid or.
That fireworks factory again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the language has to be flexible enough to allow for both situations. Where, either it's a long-term rental or a short-term rental or, permanent home until your parents pass away or your disabled person passes away. The other thing regarding the clutter, I would hope that the language for allowing the ADU would also include in the building design review. One of the criteria is storage space for grills and bicycles and snowmobiles. I don't know what.
What about an automobile? What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, should there be a garage? Should there be a carport? I mean, you already have regulations for not having unlicensed vehicles, parked on property. So that handles part of that.
Okay. And just for the record, Chip Evers joined us. He's sitting over there. He's also a new member of the Planning Commission. So he just came in. Just want to let you know he's there. Any other comments about anything? Yes. Zoning code related thing.
Yeah. Like my sweater.
Yes, I do.
So, the unenforced rules might be an interesting list for us to make. Things that are unenforced in the current code. That might be something that Jeff could bring to our attention, a list of those, just like the list of the loopholes or gaps or inconclusive ideas. But I was thinking about the 2024 zoning code. And I looked a little bit at 2 or 3 things. One was lighting, landscape lighting. There's a great gardener and outdoors man by the name of Tally, who talks about having landscape lighting on around your home 24/7 or all night long, and how it doesn't allow bugs and critters to reproduce properly to protect each other and our environment. And so I want to make sure that in our 2024 update, whatever that was put in there, that we really look future forward, just like she's talking about with preservation and demarcation, but deconstruction. The things that would make Harbor Springs even a greater place to live, because we are thinking of the resilience. There was one piece in the 2024 code that said we couldn't have weather cladding on our buildings. Extreme weather cladding on our buildings, and so I don't know what that means, but I encourage us to look at these little details, and it maybe won't be boilerplate as much as it will be, you know, areas where we can really go in and design something that's great for Harbor Springs.
So, to help Jan, what would be the headlines? Headlines is zoning code should include.
Forward choices for Harbor Springs that adapt to really contemporary and modern issues. Our environment, allowing bugs to live and critters, weather resilience, shoreline resilience, things like that.
Could you say it again? I couldn't hear.
Was talking about not lighting up the whole place like an airport. So the reverse of that is what Bill already has, but dark sky views. So dark sky views would be something by Karen's and I would say to me, we want that. We would like to maintain dark sky views for many reasons.
Yeah. And to take dark sky views is more about ambient light going up. What we want is to make sure that our homes dimensions aren't too big. In Colorado, they are reducing the square footage that's allowed just because they've gotten out of hand in terms of the amount of energy it takes to run them, the amount of energy for the driveways that have snow melt systems, and then how long that lighting should be allowed to be in place for the environment.
Outside, still somewhere on the line, in either one of our surveys or maybe previous conversation, there were small. I've always wondered when we allow these new constructions to be, what are they, 10,000 square feet, 15,000 square feet? Building or why that supersized property with all of the utilities, all of a sudden when they throw on the switch. So do we have to create a grid and infrastructure to supply a 15,000 square foot house? So that when they do come in July and throw on the switch, we have the utility that property requires. Why are people putting such big buildings in this little town? And why are they building them that way anyway? So yeah, size of buildings, Bill, you had mentioned it for.
So are you in favor of putting some sort of restriction on maximum size of buildings?
Yeah, going back to what Michael is saying about percentage of lot built to. I remember once Mayor Matt said that he was constantly getting questions about how big can I build my house in Harbor Springs? And I don't know, are we famous in the country that you can like build a big building that we almost never use? But then you come in July and there's this huge drain on the utility system. You really suck up an awful lot of green space. I think the size of the building is one you mentioned it before. I would love to hear people respond to it. And I really would like to understand better what kind of a demand it places on our infrastructure when they all show up.
Yeah, well, two things, just to clarify. Would you be in favor of a maximum size of a building, or could it be expressed in terms of percent of coverage of the lot?
You know, I can see a maximum size being okay, but I can see people objecting to that. Holy moly, you're gonna tell me how big I can build. I would probably lean more toward percentages so that a property has to have a certain percentage of green space, certain percentage of building. And I don't like that greenwash thing where you say, well, I'm gonna give, $1 million to the Conservancy and they can have their 40 acres of green space over there. I think it would be smarter and more beautiful and really kind of more Harbor Springsy. If you look at those old buildings down there in Wigwam, they have huge yards, don't they? It's a monster building, but it's also a big acreage of green space, right? The ones we're putting up now they really are building quite close to their property. And there's some going up on Lake Street that are totally wiping out any kind of wildlife habitat. Where are those critters gonna go? And not necessarily in defense of where they're gonna go, but I'll tell you where they're gonna go. They're going into Michael's yard and they're gonna eat his plants because they already are and he lives nearby, so that's where they're gonna go. So, yeah.
They serve up the Chihuahua for advertising.
My favorite Chihuahua.
Have at it.
So, yeah, a percentage of building, green space. And there's probably some kind of algorithm somewhere that says, you got this much construction, you really need this much green space to offset it within the ownership of your.
Okay, all right. Got it.
Thank you.
Mhm. Can't believe our parking lot is that big. He's still going at it out there, but please speak up when.
They said they're almost done. It's for
Okay, yeah, it sounds like they're deconstructing the building. on this point. So Nancy,
Nancy Rondell, I do think we were, keep our bigger goals in mind. And I certainly hear you, Pam, but about year-round residents, some more affordable housing, our workers in town, our schools in towns, a lot of these other things it would help the planning commission to make choices that would focus on that, and it would do away with some of these other issues. You know, a person who's a nurse, speaking from personal experience, is not gonna build a 5,000 square foot house. Chances are very good that will not happen. So if the priority is year-round working and retired residents and more diversity, more affordable housing, if we can keep those big goals, our sustainability of our school system, which is a huge concern. A lot of these other things would fall into
all right,
to make that happen.
all right, thank you. Other comments? Yes.
Oh, Ann O'Brien, 565 East Main Street. Okay. I don't like doing this. We did deconstruct the house that was on. It was at a cost. It was not cost savings, but we felt it was important to us to do. It was not, the house that was there was not looking like Harbor Springs. And I think the house that we replaced looks a little more what people think is Harbor Springs, but that was our personal choice. We fit into the zoning exactly. We went to the zoning and it was exactly, we wanted to do more. We knew if we tried to do more, we would have to get in a variance, and with our neighbors, it would not happen. They're very conservative and it wouldn't happen. So we downsized to, you know, what exactly fit within the parameters. I think the new codes or the new zoning simplifies that. It was our property. I think, you know, we were good stewards of our property. And we would have, the house that we thought that we, you know, wanted was just a little bit different, but it would have been, fit our needs better. And so the fact that I would have to get approval, not only from the zoning, but then from our neighbors to do anything more, you want to be good stewards, but I think to follow the rules, it's to go to the planning and zone or go to the zoning and get your approvals. And, you know, I think because it's your property, you bought it, it's your property. So, and I don't, you know, yes, we want to keep it historical, you know, but, we're not in a, what is it? What's the term? Historic, preservation area, you know? And so the diversity, we're a town and diversity is good. So,
So to summarize, you think an owner should follow the zoning code, whatever it is, go to the city for those issues and not necessarily be impacted by what the neighbors.
I wouldn't
feel.
want to add another layer, which
I see.
is what I'm
Okay.
kind of hearing. I think if you follow the procedures,
And we have a comment from Ann on Zoom.
Yeah, great. I heard a click. Ann, go ahead.
Hey, good morning. This is Ann Askew. Everyone keeps using the words affordable housing, and I'm just kind of wondering what's the Planning Commission's definition of affordable housing and what makes something affordable? Because that might be very different depending on who's talking about it.
You're the chair, Bill.
I'll answer. I am. The word affordable doesn't appear in either version of the zoning code. It hasn't been defined by the planning commission or anybody else. The track we were going down was about a few more choices for property owners about how they use their property. And thinking that if they had a few more choices, maybe they could add something that's smaller, that could be potentially less expensive. But no, there's really never, in the zoning code, there's nothing about affordable housing. That's usually a financial kind of a scheme. And the zoning code doesn't cover.
In the master plan, there is a line about housing that says across the income spectrum.
Yes.
I can't tell you which one that is, but I know that it is there, and when we started working on it, that's what we look to say, okay, what do we need to do about housing?
Yeah, here to promote housing across the income spectrum.
Right.
Almost
So
to consider include lot size, like building massing into the future.
So that's a pretty broad concept and one that's really hard to define, especially when market forces come into play. So, but everyone keeps talking about it. Is that going to be something we're going to take into consideration? Because I think one example, people keep kind of going towards smaller houses, smaller lot sizes being affordable. The little cute little Bay Street cottages, I mean, they sell for an average of $1 million a piece, and that's not very affordable for most people who are in town. So are we looking at that type of thing or looking at apartment buildings? Or, I mean, what are the things that are being considered to cover the spectrum of affordable housing? Because multiple people in the room have brought that up already today.
Well, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. What do you think the zoning code should say? How should it address affordable housing, if at all? What do you think?
For me, I don't really think it's something you can address. I mean, that is something that's going to come to play based on the market and who's going to buy the homes. You know, everyone's going to want to get the most value out of their home at the time of sale. I just don't think it's something we can control.
Yeah, is it even appropriate for government to try to control prices?
Right. So
That's
right, it's not. So I guess I'm confused of why it's such a common buzzword being used in many of these meetings. If we can't control it, why do we even try to discuss it? Maybe just like the woman who talked about earlier about, set a code up and let everyone kind of make the choices based within what's available in the code instead of trying to control it so much.
Okay.
actually, I would just say, Ann, I'm with you. I think we ought to control it a little bit less and let the market work. And let property owners have a few more choices about how they use their property. So I'm in sync with you on that.
Okay.
If you care, if anyone care.
Yeah, thank you, Ann. And just as a time check, we're approaching the bottom of the hour, which is a 1 hour meeting, but I'm happy to go longer in order to get as many of the comments you can. So let's go another 10 minutes to see where we are. So, yeah.
One quick question, also on Bill's, I think original, not here, but original, outline of risks and questions, et cetera. Was the mobile home park. So I'm gonna guess, not for sure, but I'm gonna guess that the mobile home park that is up there on Lake Street is probably more affordable housing all by itself. It is. I know that I met a woman who was recently widowed. She had a nice property in town, an expensive property in town. She sold it. It was too much property for her. She moved into the mobile home park. She loves living there, and it saves her a tremendous amount of money. So maybe we can't really define affordable like the Zoomer is asking, but we did have protection of the mobile home park as an example of something maybe we should do on Bill's original list of questions. And by, I don't know, nature, the mobile home park, if it were protected and as a mobile home park, respected as a mobile home park, just maybe by its nature, there would always be some more affordable housing in Harbor Springs. Just because of what it is.
And you can zone multiple residential, you can zone manufactured homes. That's what you're going for. That's a specific zone.
So if we protected the mobile home park, yeah, what Nancy's described.
There are ways that zoning impacts the cost of housing. I'm not talking about controlling the market. No, we can't and we should. I totally agree. But there are ways to zone in to encourage more affordable ways.
And maybe protected the mobile home park could be one of.
Okay.
We have a Zoom comment.
Let's see, who is it? Is it Dana? Go ahead.
It's Dana. Hi, everybody. I just wanted to point out that the Harbor Springs of today that we all love, and, you know, I think we don't want to change it tremendously, did not come to be by having a highly controlled zoning ordinance. It has character, you know, we've got our little quirks, you know, we've got some houses that aren't, you know, white clapboard, you know, like I've had friends actually ask us, you know, is it a zoning thing that you have to have a white house in Harbor Springs? And I think it's fun and interesting to have different things. And I just was doing a little dive on like the villages in Florida where everything looks the same. And that's not what we want to become. And that became that way because it was highly master planned. So I would, as other people have said, you know, try not to be so restrictive. Let people do express themselves. You know, we need things like setbacks and all that. But if we want a town with character, it's not going to come from requiring people, you know, to have some type of, you know, rigid, what do I want to say, ordinance on how things should look.
Okay. Yeah.
Lisa Morris again, going back to the size of the building, rather than specify a max size of the building, could we work into the ordinance a infrastructure review? Where people have to report on how much energy they're gonna use, how much sewer they're gonna use, how much water they're gonna use, and let that control, you know, set limits on that, and let that control the size of the building.
I'm not sure how much sewer I would use when I built a new house. How would I know that?
If you
Well,
had 15
you
toilets.
go by the number of bedrooms, that's how you size your septic field.
Okay, or number of people,
bedrooms,
number of people occupying the building.
Well, the general thing is, I think, I just went through getting a sewer or a septic permit up at the UP. Number of bedrooms times 2 people. That's the number of people that are gonna
Okay.
potentially use that house.
All right.
Okay, so that's how you can calculate.
Okay, so you can spec it out based on the plan form of the building and all.
Because
Okay.
I'm trying to build my own personal care facility, so I can care for all my residents. And I need 8 bedrooms, so that put me into a different category of helping my septic system needed.
I see. Okay, yes.
How many of the towns in Harbor Springs are on septic versus city sewer? I mean, that's.
Well, there's combinations
But
too.
you
I'm
don't-
on
but
city
you're
water,
not-
but not cities.
You're not limited in a city sewer like you are when you're gonna do a septic.
Right, but your sewage treatment plant can only handle so much sewage at one time.
Okay, yes, Karen.
Where this has come up big time is recently with the watershed. They've come in and said that the short-term rentals have to be inspected now because a lot of these homes that are going into this business really weren't for as many bedrooms as are now being rented out. And so they want to have some sort of oversight on it.
So is that a township hearing? Is that sense?
I think it's, she came to planning commission and city council meetings, I think, to talk about that.
So it must have been within the city's purview?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good question.
Yes.
I had a question, relating to the earlier, story. Is it Pam?
Yeah.
Ann. Isn't that the reason we have setbacks so that we're not on top of our neighbors? So that we have our green space and they have their green space, and so we have the space between us rather than having, say, our neighbor being able to.
Yeah, that's the intent of
That's the
avoid the
intent of it.
McMansion going out to the edge of the property. Yeah.
Right. So,
Now, the
Is
question
there-
is how much, perhaps?
alright, so is the up on all the changes in the zoning, without looking at all the paperwork, but my understanding was that the new zoning that was proposed was to make the setbacks smaller so that people would enlarge their lot size. Is that correct?
No,
Bring it
no.
larger.
It
Wait,
depends
that's
on-
the question, setbacks.
Setbacks were smaller so that the building,
Setbacks, okay.
if building size would be.
Related to zoning, nothing is simple, so.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the answer is difficult because it depended on the zone you were talking about.
Okay.
And also, for the record, whatever that proposal was, did not go forward. So here we are today with the original zoning. Yeah. Right, so
Be bigger, should the setbacks be smaller?
So what would you like in the future code? Do you think the setback should be in general smaller or larger or keep it the same?
That's a good question. You know, I think it depends on the neighborhood again, you know, kind of looking at, because Harbor has such different clusters of neighborhood, and I think it depends on what neighborhood you're looking at.
Okay.
And I think zoning is good to review that kind of stuff. I don't necessarily think I would need my neighbor to have to look at what I want to do on the property, but
Okay, I do want to make sure we cover any comments from the Zoom people, so let us know. Dana, do you have a comment? Your hand is still up.
I have a quick question.
So I'll move on, Dana. Okay, there we go. All right, fine. Let's say 5 more minutes, 3 or 4 more comments, yes.
Doesn't the percentage that you can occupy in your space almost equate to the square footage of your house? Non-living space, but aren't they, it's like kind of the same purpose? I would have a hard time telling someone how big their square foot could be in their house, but no problem pointing them to a zoning code saying this is the percent you can use, have at it. Isn't it the same? Well,
They can be guided by either ways, you know, maximum X square feet of the foot or maximum coverage of the property. There are different ways to do that.
how do we do it now?
One kind of relates to, let's say, the sprawl. So for example, a ranch house, single story ranch, covering the same square footage of the property would be no different than a 2-story with a larger square foot covering the same.
And we have that in place, right?
That is, it's.
Yeah,
right,
okay.
But it.
Okay, the garage, the shed, the barn.
Right. And we do have that now. It varies depending on which residential district or which district you're in.
I got it, thank you.
Yeah. Any other comments? I'm in the going, gone stage now. Yes.
David Everard, 27 Bethter Road, outside the city, but I really like the city and I've been around here for 35 years. I think one of the things that we need to look at is the 10,000 foot view of the zoning, where people like Chris and can build the town organically. as you take and you look at zoning from a big standpoint outside the city, you don't want to have developers come in here like across the bay, create large developments, move out and leave us with the problems. So.
Fair point. Yes.
I'd just like to make a real quick comment about setbacks. And I'd like to say that it is obvious that setbacks are completely subjective. We have zones in town where there are no setbacks because it's not considered a health or safety issue to have setbacks. Setbacks are completely subjective and in convention that we put on our residential properties that have varied over the years, and they've varied by zone and this and that. But there is no need to have setbacks in town in terms of health and safety. So I'd just like to say that that's, otherwise we wouldn't have a zone, CBD, where we don't have setbacks.
And the building code actually requires so much distance between structures.
However, you can build structures
Again, something.
adjoining in downtown if you build according to code. So even fire is not an issue. Requirement for setbacks.
Okay, last comment, yes.
Rick Tarczynski, State Street. We do have wonderful setbacks, in 439, they were realigned to take into consideration power buildings, for the buildings and all that. But no matter what we do, we set up, we're overlooking a very vital step in this, and that's the ZBA. Zoning board of approval or appeal, depending on how you feel about it. They override all the zoning code anytime there's a financial hardship for the property owner. What we really need to do is realign and redefine how they judge what they can let happen in overrule the zoning code. Because that's where a lot of the problems.
Okay, thanks. Thanks. Okay, one final bonus, yes.
Oh, I'm so glad. So I want to thank you guys for setting this up. I really appreciate it. I think you guys, very responsible. You have different times, you have different dates, you have different locations. You're trying to reach a lot of people. And a lot of your committee is here to listen to it. And I just want to thank you and really, really appreciate it as a homeowner here.
And on that note, the next one of these sessions is actually coming up this Saturday. You're welcome to join us. What time of day is that one? I don't know. Anyway,
10 to 11.
10 to 11, yeah.